Chris Watkin here with Adele Crocker, who is John Paul's right-hand lady, managing director, and actually the lady that does all the work. And what I'd like to do today, whilst I'm up seeing JP, is talk to you, Adele, about your story as a letting and estate agent and how you went from basically being a property manager to being an MD of a 10 branch, potentially more branch operation. So if that's okay, can we listen to your story, and hopefully others can learn from what you've done, so if they want to progress they can learn from you.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when did you first want to become a letting and or estate agent, or did you fall into it like most of us?
I think I fell into it's probably fair to say. I had...
When was this?
Back in, let me have a think, 2008.
You must have been a child.
I was, just a whippersnapper. Thank
Okay.
you for that. So by 2008, I was previously a manager, had
Okay.
kind of worked...
So what, you're in your early mid-20s then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I doing all right?
Yeah, you're doing very, very
Okay.
well. I'm loving it already.
Bless you.
And I was looking for... I'd been in a really high-pressured, high-environment job from being about 19. And then I had my son, second child, so I had a 2-year-old and a new baby, and thought something's probably going to give at this point. I knew I always wanted to work and didn't want to get
What
out
line of business
it.
were you in then?
I worked in a customer service environment. I worked for an electronics manufacturing company, nothing like what I do now.
Selling stuff or?
Zero interest in the product. I managed a team of account managers, so for things like Compaq, Ford, we sold the components like capacitors. So it was a global, huge global company, lots of opportunity, did lots of travelling, loved it. It was absolutely brilliant. Started at the very, very bottom and kind of worked my way up, and was managing about a 24-person department at the time. Very, very young at that point.
What did you enjoy about it?
People.
Okay.
I never, when I left school, I always thought I wanted to work in the hospitality industry. I always knew I liked the entertaining side of things. I always knew I liked working with people. I always believed in customer service and found it very well to gel with people, and thought, oh yeah, I think I'd like to wear a neck scarf and be a air hostess. So yeah, let's do that.
So when you were working for this component firm, you obviously fast-tracked and became the boss of a department. Did you become the boss of people that had been your colleagues?
Yes.
How did that work at that organisation?
I was young and naive and thought, well, all these people are my friends and it's going to be fantastic and they're going to absolutely support me. And at the time, I was really very young, and we had it was quite, most of the senior management team within the company were older. And we got a really young operations director at the time. I think he must have been in his late 20s, and he
Obviously much older than you at that time.
Yeah, obviously. And I was always the first one in, always the last one to go, always kind of put my hand up, coming up with ideas, asking questions. I was, I've always been quite vocal with, have you thought about this? And obviously he liked that. I think prior to that, it was quite an old, it was who you knew, not what you knew kind of scenario. Someone's been here 20 years, they're obviously going to get the promotion. He kind of turned things on the head a little bit and was very much looking for younger talent and fresh ideas and a fresh approach.
But how did the staff that were your colleagues, who you thought were your friends, deal with you when you basically became their boss?
Some of them found it really, really difficult. Definitely, I think there was definitely a problem with some of the males. And there was definitely a problem with the older males, was a real problem.
Because obviously, I mean, these same issues you see them in the estate and letting agency all the time. So how did you deal with it? Was it easy to start with, or what did you learn?
No, I found it really hard. I had many sleepless nights about it. I had tears at home, and I knew I really wanted to do the job I knew I was capable of doing, but I was met and challenged constantly. And I, in the end, had to hit it head on, and I just kind of got these people in a one-to-one environment and basically said, I'm here to stay, I'm not going anywhere. I feel like you've definitely got a bit of a problem with me and we need to understand what that is, because I'm not going to continue to lock horns with you. So this is what it looks like. Let's have a conversation.
Okay, and how did most of those conversations go then?
I think decent from a point of view is I managed to get it off my chest and the elephant was out of the room, and actually what I did was set some expectations to say that moving forward that's unacceptable, regardless of my age, my sex, whatever else, my experience. Somebody above you believes that I'm good enough to do this job, and I know I also am, so therefore we're going to have to like it or lump it. And for me, you know, that's
And
starting.
did most change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was just a level of acceptance. I think from that moment forward, there was definitely less locking of horns and definitely less resistance, to you know, toe the line and with new ideas or different approaches, and more of a, let's just hear, you know, we'll kind of see where it goes.
Did you lose anyone?
No.
That's a good sign, isn't
Yeah.
it? So did they all eventually toe the line? Most of them.
Yes.
And how did you get anyone who were probably non-believers into your raving fans?
Absolutely. And that just took time, and what I struggle with in life is patience. Is definitely not something I've got lots of. I kind of expect results and I expect them quickly. So that was something that was difficult, and I had to accept that I've had the conversation with them. They now know where I stand. I've got a lot to prove, and I think being young, being a female, if I'm being completely honest, the electronics industry is very male dominated. A lot of the account managers are males, a lot of the senior management team were males, and they really, really struggled with that. So I arguably had a bigger job to do in order to prove myself, and it took a lot of hard work, but I knew that providing I put in the work and got the results, everybody's got to come along at that point, because how can you not? You just look a bit silly at that point if you don't.
So how long were you in that role as boss lady of that department until you left?
About 5 years.
Okay. Basically, the challenges at home meant that you couldn't do a good job at home.
I just struggled. I travelled a lot with that particular role. It was long hours, and I just something had to give. And at the time, you know, I made the decision that actually I'm going to have to kind of put the career on hold a little bit and be a mum.
How did that make you feel?
I think once I struggled with making the decision, but once I'd made it, I was really happy with it. I think half of the problem I ever had.
Did you feel a failure because or any regret because you put all this time and effort in as a mother of two good kids and a career? Do you think you could have carried on?
No. I could. That's a lie. I could have carried on. I would have regretted. So when you say any
How
regrets,
old were your kids at the time when you decided I have to be more of a mother?
2 and 4.
Well, fair goes. So, what did you do? Go into a estate agency, letting agency, or do you just decide this is too much for me? I'm just going to bail out.
No, I saw a job advertised with a local estate agent. I'd always had an interest in property. I like
Who hasn't?
Exactly. It's true. It's right, isn't it? You know, all the Sarah Beanie programs were on at the time. I loved Sundays mornings, looking around B&Q, let's decorate, and all of that kind of stuff. But people was definitely my passion. And what I understood was where I could always pick up my career, because what I'd learned, the skill set that I had, was never going to leave us. It was just a choice as to whether or not I chose to do something with it in the future. But I would never get that time back with my children, so there was no regrets from that front. And I saw a job advertised for a local estate agent. It was part-time. It was as a sales negotiator, and I thought, I'm going to give that a go.
But you were earning decent money, decent job, going down to a part-time neg.
Yeah.
How did your husband feel about the fact that you were going from, probably giving him a run for his money, all the way down to basically having a part-time wage?
I think he was really quite supportive, because it's difficult for anybody in a relationship. He could see how much I struggled with the guilt of leaving the children as often as I did and not being with them and not seeing certain things, and I think that would have potentially caused us problems in the future. It was definitely not helping me at the time, so he was very supportive in that there was a plan in place. He was going to pick up a little bit more work. He was sitting a qualification at the time which was due to come to an end, which meant that he could pick up some more work. He inevitably went to work away for a little while, which meant that he covered the vast majority of the drop in salary, which is obviously something you've got to be aware of. You look at your direct debits and you cut your non-essentials, like your all-encompassing Sky package that can go, and you just work with it. And actually it's quite therapeutic to go back to basics and sit with your bank statements and go, why have we got that, why have we got that, what we're paying that for. And it was genuinely a really lovely time. I've got great fondness of thinking about being able to go to toddler groups and, you know,
seeing
all
your
of
kids
that.
grow up,
Yes.
because they are so important.
Yeah.
So, what year did you become a part-time neg?
It'll have been, well, I went into property about 2008, so yeah, about 2007, 2008.
Okay. So just as the property market was about to crash, or just had crashed, and it really hit you, you're from the northeast, it really did hit you quite hard. What did you learn being a part-time neg about a falling property market?
I joined at the very kind of just before it crashed, so it was at its very kind of peak, and it was fantastic and I loved it, and it was fast-paced. I didn't really know what it was to negotiate, if I'm being completely honest, because houses were selling themselves. You picked up the phone, you took an offer, the most you'd have to do is take another higher offer and higher offer. So I joined at a time that gave me an absolute false kind of sense of what property was about. Loved it, enjoyed it, and then there was the crash shortly afterwards. The company that I worked for at the time made redundancies. I turned out to be one of those redundancies. At the time, I was told that Hang Fire though was setting up a lettings department, and we've kind of earmarked you for that. So Hang Fire, take some time off, please try not to, you know, go and hunt too actively for another job, and we'll come get you type thing.
Okay. Did you have to wait long?
About 3 months.
Okay.
About 3 months.
And you went in, what, as a lettings neg?
Yes. It was a landlord liaison officer.
That's a posh title, isn't it?
Fantastic. Basically what that meant was any landlords of vacant properties, any new landlords, I would kind of nurture, and I would work on finding them a tenant basically. So very much relationship based, very active on communication and so on, and that was my job, and again, loved it.
How long were you a landlord liaison officer?
Probably only about a year before the big fella jumped in and took over.
Okay, so for those of us that don't know, that's John Paul, or JP as you call him. What, he bought your firm, did he?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time you were still a landlord liaison officer. Okay, so because JP went round buying a few branches of a few independent agents.
Yes.
Okay, and did you stay in that role?
Not for very long.
Right.
I was already getting itchy feet. I loved what I did. I got very, very frustrated at the time at the company that I worked for, and that I could see lots of areas that needed to improve. I had lots of ideas about how they could potentially improve. Quite vocal about these things.
And again, you said with your previous role, you give it some.
Yeah. So if I think something's not working, then I'll say I don't think it's working.
I know, I've known you for a few years. You're not a feisty one. That's a compliment, by the way.
Thank you. I'll take that. But yeah, if something's not working, then I think, you know, I've got to...
You don't mind putting your...
No, absolutely. As long as I can say it's not working because, and this is what I think we can do to fix it. I don't
So
believe
basically you grabbed JP by the ear, you know, and sat him down and said, did you have a boss as a lettings boss?
I did have a lettings boss, and I'd gone to him previously and said, I don't think this is working because, and at the time some of our problems were, I dealt with landlords at the front end.
Yep.
Very, very happy, found them tenants, it was a brilliant job. I got lots of praise, flowers, chocolates, the works.
Give it to someone else in the lettings department.
Yeah, exactly. By the time they come back to us and I'd say, hello there, Mr. Smith, nice to have you back, how's the journey been? You know, we're on about getting you a new tenant now. He said, actually it's been poor, I've had this situation. And it was very difficult for me then to...
Were your fellow colleagues letting you down then?
I think it wasn't so much from a colleague point of view, the structure just wasn't right, and arguably the people within that structure also weren't right.
So what were you suggesting to JP at the time?
So to my then boss and subsequently to JP, I said, you know, the problem is it's too fragmented. Landlords don't have faith that actually we understand them and we understand their needs and we understand their property. So I feel like I get a good handle on that, then something will happen with the rent, then something will happen with the repair. Okay. Nobody's really talking to anybody else, they're all doing their bit and that's it, without any real thought about the whole picture. So I think it would make more sense actually if we had a department and we looked after a multitude of properties, but we looked after all of the aspects of that.
So one person is responsible for everything?
Yeah. Or
sounds a good idea.
A much bigger chunk than what we were doing then. There was this bit, then there was this bit, nobody really spoke to anybody else. Person in repairs was demotivated because all they ever got to do was tell people you need to spend some money or someone's trashed your house or your boilers broke down, so all they got was the...
It's not a pretty job, is it?
No, it's not a pretty job. The person in accounts had a very similar role. And then there was me that did all the nice stuff but then had to deal with the not great stuff at the time they come back round.
Okay. So did JP listen?
He did. He didn't really have any choice, in all fairness, and
no. He likes to be told what to do.
Yeah. At that point in time, I'd kind of made my mind up that they weren't really listening to me, and for all, I'm not saying I'm right every time, they weren't saying what I was saying wasn't right. It was just a case of, I hear you, but we're not going to do anything about it. And I'd started to get itchy feet. I'd started to already, I think, it's difficult when you have a mentality like I do, it's difficult sometimes to have any job just as a job. I think that's sometimes a vice of mine. But
what, you kind of put your heart and soul into?
Yeah. So I think that works really well when it works both ways, but when it doesn't, and actually your employer does think of you as
just a robot.
Then it doesn't work. So I'd found another job at that point in time. I'd gone to my then employer and said, I've been offered another role.
This is the lettings, not JP, but your boss.
That's right. I've been offered another role. I'm going to take it. I didn't really want to. From a location point of view, this is fantastic. It was like 200 yards away from home. Lots of things fit really well, but I'm just a little bit frustrated and feel a little bit hemmed in.
Okay.
And in fairness to him, he put his hands up at that stage and said, I hear you, you're not wrong, but can you bear with us for all of 2 weeks? Something's about to come off, which I can't really divulge too much about, but I think it'll do what you need to do for yourself. And then in walked John.
Oh, so John wasn't your boss at this point?
No.
Fair goes.
No.
So there's JP, John Paul, riding in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his knight in shining armour or his steed. You know, like the Dirty Dozen, the Magnificent Seven. So you saw this big, ugly ex-cage fighter with tattoos who speaks in a Geordie accent, but he's not a Geordie. Is he Macca? Is that what you call it? Mackham.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you impressed?
I just thought he bought lots of houses from us, to be fair. He'd been coming in and out, and I thought, I'll look after him. I always made sure he got teas and coffees, and he's going to buy a few houses, so I'll make sure he's looked after.
Because, and if you have a bit of trouble on Stockton High Street, you can sort him out, can't you?
Absolutely, so he came in on day one, and in fairness, did a very good job by way of spending time with each member of staff. So the day that he took over was the day we found out we didn't know a thing. We didn't even really suspect anything. We thought possibly one of the directors was going to step down, but we didn't suspect that there'd been a buyout at all.
Okay.
So the day in which he came in...
So basically on the day he bought the business, he came in and sat down with every single member of staff?
Individually, yes. Which was a good move.
That's quite a nice touch.
Yeah, it was a good move.
He's a bit of a softie, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He hides it well, but I think so. Yeah.
Little pussycat. You big cat talons. Don't tell him.
I won't.
Okay. So he sat down with you, and what did he say?
He said, tell me a little bit about you and tell me what works and what doesn't work. And he kind of spent I think I was the last one in, to be honest, and I think he'd spent about 10 minutes with everyone, and 40 minutes later we emerged, and I thought, that's probably just got me P45 right there. But I did just tell him warts and all. I said, it's a good company, it's a good brand. I think that we're dated. I think that the staff could be better. I think this and I think that, and this is how and what he did was listened, and he didn't actually say a lot, which is not common.
Do you think that is a skill or an attitude that many bosses don't have, the ability to listen?
Yes. Yes. And the fact that he did, and what was impressive for me was, John, what I know now is John was relatively nervous at the time. It was his biggest acquisition at that point in time, and he was nervous about coming in and speaking to staff. So what that did was it gave him an element of, as far as I'm concerned, of humbleness. And what it meant was, rather than him sitting on a pedestal, actually he just sat with us, he offered us a coffee, and he said, let's have a chat, and that was refreshing.
How did it make you feel that someone who basically took your business over came in and listened to you as, quite frankly, bottom running the staff, all of you?
It was fantastic. It was really, really good, and it was the reason that I stayed.
Okay, so were you still then, once JP had taken the business over, you were still a landlord liaison officer?
For a short while.
Okay.
John's not one to wait about.
No, he's not.
He's full steam ahead kind of guy. So I spoke to him about some of the ideas I had.
So what was this, 2010, 11, somewhere around there?
Yeah. Spoke to him about some of the ideas I had, and he sat and nodded and listened and said, well, actually, the business that I've got already, it runs very similar to that, so it sounds like we're in tune with, you know.
How many the office that you were in, what roughly number office was that for him?
There's only number 2.
Number 2, so it's his first acquisition?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your next role in the new Castledene group then?
Branch manager. He offered us branch manager role within about a month.
So that's branch manager of both sales and lettings?
We only did lettings.
You
The company that he bought only
Okay.
did lettings and property.
So what happened to your boss then?
He was the director of the company, so when they sold out, there was already a position for a more senior member of staff.
So because of your previous role, you'd been used to management. How many members of staff were there in the branch apart from you?
5.
Okay, and how did they take to being, because again you had the same situation previously in your old job where you were a colleague and now you were their boss. How did they take that, and what did you do differently because of what you learned at the previous job?
I think I hit it more head on this time. I think I had an expectation, given that I'd had a bad experience many years ago. I hit it head on. I understood what may happen. The first time that happened, I tried far too long to try and win people around.
That was at the previous job.
Yeah, killing them with kindness, filling gaps, being ever so nice to everybody. Yes, you need that time off. Yes, absolutely, you can have it. Thinking, you know, I'll gain their trust and their loyalty and their friendship by killing them with kindness. It doesn't work. You've got to respect your boss, is what you've got to do. So this time round, I expected it, so I was prepared for it. And I knew I would hit it head on immediately.
I mean, what advice would you give to somebody who's gone from colleague to boss in the same branch?
Make the step immediately. There is a difference between being a colleague and a boss. Don't think that you can do both in the same way that you always have, because you can't. I've never seen that work. You can definitely maintain a relationship, but I think the dynamic has to change, and it has to change quickly. I think the longer you leave it, the harder it will be for you, and the more people you'll lose along the way. Understand that it's got to change. Prepare yourself for that, and don't be scared of it. Just do it. You are in a different position now. What I said to the staff on day one is, I've been through this before, and for all I know that we're all good friends as colleagues and we'll have a drink outside of work and we'll call each other up, I also know what you think about previous senior management. I also know what your frustrations are. I also know what you do and don't do, and when you take a longer lunch or you start shopping on Acer. You know, I wasn't your boss then, I am now. So you know what I know, but likewise, the frustrations that you had, I've worked with those frustrations and I'm going to support you with them, but in return, this is what I expect.
Did you lose anyone?
Yes, there was one person who had apparently been led to believe they were earmarked for a more senior role.
Okay. Was that a disappointment for you to lose that person?
No. I knew that was going to be difficult, and I wasn't quite sure that we'd ever get round that. So for me, I would have worked on getting round it, but the process of replacement and getting that instant kind of manager-employee relationship was far easier.
What happened to the performance and the attitude of the remaining 3 or 4 people that were left?
Performance didn't dip. Attitudes took a couple of weeks, I would say, to turn and understand, but I persevered with that far too long in the first instance, previously when I was made a manager, and I knew I wasn't going to do that this time. The difficulty, probably the most difficult job that I had to do was I changed their roles also very, very quickly. So I came in and not only was that...
New boss, a new job.
Yeah, exactly. And so quite quickly I changed their roles, and a lot of them needed new training and development plans. I understood their strengths and weaknesses, and I knew, you know, what I had to work on, and some of them had been there 20 years and it was a difficult change.
Are they still there today?
Yes, yeah, some of them are.
Okay, so how long were you JP's first branch manager of his acquisitions then?
How old, sorry?
How long were you the branch manager?
I believe around 3 years, possibly slightly longer.
Okay, so 2014, what was the next job?
Area manager.
So how many offices had he by this time?
4.
Now, what was it like going from branch manager, where you are kind of still dealing with customers, to being an area manager where you're not dealing with customers? How did you deal with that?
At that point, it wasn't an overnight thing. It wasn't something John said, would you like to be my area manager? It was something that I kind of morphed into. There wasn't an area manager role at the time. What we had was branch managers, and John was managing all of the branch managers. And as John started to get more involved with the growth of the company and driving it forward in acquisitions, my forte was much more around the operational side of things, the detail, which is definitely not John's bag.
No.
So what would happen is I'd roll certain things out, and the branch that I ran was ran very, very, very well. And there'd be certain things I would speak to John about that I was doing that he'd go, I love that, could you roll that out across the other branches?
How did the other branch managers take to one of their fellow branch managers telling them what to do?
I didn't really ever tell anybody what to do. I was there to support them. I've not really...
Is that your style?
Yeah, I very rarely tell anybody what to do. I will ask somebody to support me with something, or I'll ask somebody to tell me what they think of, or I'll suggest, at that point in time, I would say, do you have a problem in this area? Actually, yeah, we do. That's great, because I was having exactly the same. This is what I've done. Do you think that would work in here? I knew it would work. But by engaging with people, asking them for their input, I'd get buy-in. Getting buy-in meant that they would work with me. Whereas if I'd gone and said, this is what I do in my branch and we're fantastic, you need to do the same, I would have lost them.
Do you think the fact that you're a female and therefore have, I'm making a sweeping statement here, but females tend to have greater empathy, empathetic, more EQ skills than men?
I definitely think of anything that's helped me. I wasn't particularly academic. I definitely think of anything that's helped me. I've definitely quite switched on with emotional intelligence. I definitely have the ability to put myself in somebody else's shoes and think, how will they feel right now? And I think that certainly helped us with difficult conversations and approaching difficult conversations and getting the best out of those.
What do you think men could do more to get greater skills?
Just employ a woman? No, I'm joking.
More EQ or...
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely work on that. A little bit of reflection, a little bit of... I think you should automatically, when anything isn't working, look at what you could do differently.
Do you think there's a blame culture? Is it a very masculine thing to try and, we're doing it my way or the highway? Your sort of skills are on the lines of, here's your problems and here's a potential solution. Do you want to buy in?
I don't know if that's a male-female thing or it's a person-to-person thing. I've worked alongside women who are as gung-ho as, another male manager that I've had. I've seen it more, kind of with some men that I've worked with, but
Do you think being a woman in agency and being a boss and going up through the ranks, you've almost had to work harder than probably a male, to get where you are?
At times, yes, definitely. I think you've got more to prove. I think certainly as a young woman, and I felt that definitely more as a mother. I felt like there's a little bit of a stigma attached to when I was a young female who was climbing the ladder. I still had to work hard, but I probably had that, oh, this lady's very driven. As soon as I become a mum, I think some of that skill set can be dismissed a little.
What would you say to any young aspiring neg or estate agent valuer, female with a young family? What would you say to those ladies on how to balance the expectations of being a mother, the expectations of being a great employee, driving the business and basically spinning lots of plates?
What advice would I give?
Yes. With what you've been through.
Question. I would say the greatest advice I could give would be realistic with yourself. One of the things I've struggled with is I have very high expectations of me.
Are you a perfectionist?
I could be if I allowed myself to be. I've trained myself to give myself a little bit of a break. I think realistically I can remember my health visitor coming around shortly after I'd had my son, and she said, "You always worry me," I was kind of, "What do you mean I worry you?" And she said, "Because it's not normal how well things are when I come." She said, "You've got a 2-year-old and you've got a new baby. I expect toys everywhere. And she said, everything's perfect and you're up and you dress. I want to see you in your pyjamas, and I want to see, I want to see stuff lying around." And I think what I like to do, everything I do, I like to do well. And I do that with everything. So my brother is very academic. He's very talented at things, whether it be playing a musical instrument or nothing I would say has ever come naturally to me, but the difference is I've always worked very hard at whatever I've done, and give everything my absolute best, and I also won't ever give in. So I always kind of strive to get something right, and I would never give in. The only time I guess I would ever throw the towel in on anything is at the point I go, "I've nailed that, that's good, I'm happy with that." So from an advice point of view, would be to be realistic with yourself in terms of the expectations on you, because there's only actually us that beat ourselves up.
I was about to say, do you think those expectations are from within, and probably do you think the wider community don't actually put those heavy weights of expectations?
100%, yeah. I remember, one of the employees at the time said, "I don't know how you do what you do." And I said, "I don't know what you mean, I'm not doing anything special." She said, "You're a young mum of 2 young children, you work God knows how many hours, you're on a really tight ship at work, you're always kind of dressed, got your makeup on, I don't understand how you do what you do." And I thought, realistically, nobody expects that of you. That's me that expects that of me. And sometimes actually it's okay to say, "No, I haven't been the best mum I could be today. It's not the end of the world, because actually I needed to get this done." Likewise, I'm actually going to put the laptop away tonight because we're going to have a bath, we're going to have story time, and we're going to be silly for an hour. And I guess it's just relaxing a little bit, taking a breath, and being a bit more realistic with yourself.
So you morphed into being an area manager. What's it been like in the last 5 years, basically being the right-hand lady of JP? How's that evolved? Because you're dealing with someone who is, if you don't mind me saying, he's very strong-willed.
Yes.
He's very macro, not micro. You can't be doing with the minutiae of things. He strikes me as a sort of person that loves to be in control of the situation and fears being taken advantage of by others. Have I described him?
Yeah, very well.
There you go. And in fact, to the point where it kind of surprised me that he would actually let go of some of the controls. How did you manage to wrestle control away from the day-to-day run of Castledene? Because I do know he does give you an awful lot of responsibility. How's that evolved?
You're surprised. In all honesty, I'm surprised because I never actually saw John being able to let go to the point that he's let go now.
But you never see him, do you?
Not often. Not in comparison to how I used to see. No, definitely not. I used to see John every single day. I'll still speak to him every day, but I can go a week without seeing him, which at one point was absolutely unheard of. I think, as cheesy as this sounds, I think I joined John at the right time, and I think that as much as, and as cheesy as this sounds, I hate using the word, but it is absolutely true. I've been on an absolute journey in terms of understanding what makes me tick, what am I about, what am I good at, what have I got to offer, and I think John's been on the same kind of journey himself, so I think that we've been fortunate to meet each other at a point in time where we both were ready to do that.
Because it's funny, he's written these books, and by the sounds of it, he's actually put it all into action, hasn't he?
Yeah.
The amount of people that read all this stuff but don't actually put it into action, he has, hasn't he?
John really loves the theory of things. He loves.
He's a geek.
He's a total geek. It's ridiculous. Like
he'll write a 4,000 word essay just for a laugh, won't he?
He cringes as well because he obviously will try and impose that onto you. So if he reads 5 books, obviously you should read 5 books. And
have you seen him when he does his podcast? It looks like he's sitting behind the British Library.
And then for anything anybody ever discusses, we go, I've got a good book for that.
And I bet the book has read it as well.
Oh, no doubt about it. Everything in there is read, absolutely. Now, he's tried to try and shape me into like a mini JP, but I think what he's understood is it's just not going to happen.
No.
So he's backed off from that now. He understands that the books he keeps giving us to read are still in the drawer where they were when he gave us them 4 years ago. But he loves the theory. John really loves the theory, and what is great about him is when he gets it and he loves that theory, then he will put it into practice, because even if it's difficult for him, he's got the vision to go, I know that's where I'll get to, and as much as it's out of my comfort zone, as much as it's something that doesn't feel entirely comfortable, I'm going to work on doing that. So I think we've kind of both been on that journey together, and what it's allowed us to do is, regardless of whether we've locked horns at times, regardless of we've clashed, there's had moments where I want to pull my hair out, I'm sure he has too, what we've always had the understanding of is, I know what John's values are, I know he's a good person, no matter how it might be, he can be not a great communicator if he's got his tunnel vision glasses on. But
and how do you get him out of that? Because there'll be people watching this who've got a boss like JP. How do you get them to let go of the reins of control, to give a bit more responsibility?
You've got to make them trust you, and the only way to make them trust you is give them the results. With John, I used to give John tons of detail. I used to say, I've been thinking about this, and I was thinking about doing this, and doing this, and this, and this, and this. And I would, because he's definitely got a bit of professional ADHD. He can't hold his attention for very long at all. No. And I'd lost him at that point. So then he'd end up going, yeah, I'm not sure about that, Adele,
because you were going too micro.
Too micro, didn't like it, lost him. And then I realised that actually John's a results man. Give him the results, he won't argue with you. Even if he wants to, he'll struggle, and he'll have to admit defeat at that point, if you like. So
so go to him and basically say, I want to do this in this branch, it's going to earn an extra $2,000 a month, and basically this is it.
Exactly.
Don't worry about the detail.
Yeah, exactly that. And if possible, put it on paper. He's a visual man all day long. So we did quite a chunk of work many moons ago around communication and around understanding people's communication styles. And that for me was fantastic, because I could have told you what John was, but I didn't know why. I didn't know the way his brain worked. I didn't know. I just used to think, what?
I'm a huge believer in profiling people.
Yes.
There's lots of models out there. I don't know which model you guys use. I'm a big fan of the disc model.
Yeah, that's what we did.
And you can work out why people think the way they do and act the way they do, and then you can communicate in the best way to get what you want.
Exactly. Well, we did that, and for me, that was a big turning point, because we did the colours at the time. Now I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum with John. John's red, and he was, you know how you often get like a secondary. No, there was no secondary. He was red all day long.
Yeah. He's more red than Jeremy Corbyn.
That's a true story. So he was actually, it was really, really funny because...
Although did you know there was only 2 votes last year at the general election for the Tories, and he was one of them. Anyway, go on.
So what it came out as is that John and I are at different ends of the spectrum around communication. Okay. I'm nurture. I'm very much detailed. I will always see things through to the end. John's very much direct, to the point that it can be rude. And at the point I told him that, he said, "No, I'm effing not." And I went, "You've just been rude just right there." So yeah, that was a real turning point, because I always communicated with John the way that I would like to be communicated with, and at the point I understood what made him tick, I changed that entirely. So now I kind of go one step further. When we go into a meeting, I'll have already drawn up an operational plan for something. I'll give him, if I possibly can, a diagram, whether that be an org chart of this is where we are, this is where I see him going. Those conversations now take that amount of time, and I generally always get a yes to whatever it is I'm wanting to do, and that's because actually I play it to John's.
You know how he operates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I know Castledene are moving forward, and you've got an acquisition plans going forward, and I know for a fact it's public that you are looking for an area manager role, which basically means there's going to be someone between you and the branches. How are you going to deal with that?
I'm going to be very, very pleased, because it's given the scope of how the role's grown and the scope of how the company's gone, I am ready to let go. But at the same time...
That's going to be hard for you, isn't it? Knowing what you'll like.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's difficult for me to step back from things. I'm one of these people that wants to get involved in everything and, wants to... But in the same way that it's the next phase for me. I've never really looked before at dealing with the strategy and the vision and getting involved in the acquisitions. I'm all about self-development. I love to challenge myself and to try new things, and this is my next challenge. So this is the next step for me, and I'm excited about it. It will be difficult to let go, but I've had some experience through the different roles that I've done within the company and other companies that I understand in order to grow, I've got to let go of some things, which I think is exactly where John is now, is that he's now reaping the benefits of letting go and seeing what that allows him to do now. And I look at that and think, actually, I'm going to have to let go of some things in order to grow.
Adele, thank you for your time today. I hope you've all enjoyed that and learned loads from her on her journey and your journey to progress. I'm sure you've got no issue anyone picking the phone up to you.
No, absolutely not.
And just asking your opinion on anything. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Cheers.